Welcome to the Real Freedom Podcast with your host, Ryan Wymer. Today I've got our operations manager at Offer Now Idaho, Tori Runyan, with me. Tori, how are you?
Super good.
We are going to discuss a $10 million top-line revenue company by the year 2028. That is the vision. That is what we have in store. We're going to talk, Tori, a little bit about your story, how you joined the team, and if you're an A player or you know a top-level player in a sales organization or that is looking for a big life change and wants to join a company that's making moves, what should they do?
They should reach out and apply because that's exactly who we need on the team.
Okay. And what kind of referral bonus are we offering right now?
Yeah, so if you bring me somebody that lasts for 90 days with us, only 90 days, and I'm not that mean, we'll give you $3,000.
Oh, wow. $3,000, guys. A $3,000 referral bonus. If you know of a top player or an A player salesperson, we would love to talk to them. Right now, we have more leads than we have people to close deals. So there's a ton of opportunity in front of us. Tori, how often are we losing deals in our database just due to a lack of follow-up, due to nobody being available already on seller appointments? I mean, like, we are swimming in leads and we're not even contacting all of them. It's a good problem to have, but
yeah, it's still a problem. And the answer to that is too many.
okay.
We need to save poor Corey and really, poor you for going on all these appointments because we don't have enough people to get in front of these sellers.
Yeah, it's a special thing that takes a long time to get to. You have to build the foundation. You have to build the systems, the process, like an onboarding program, basic training, right? Like, I think as owners and entrepreneurs and as business people and as leaders, a lot of times we get caught up in our day-to-day thing, right? And we're not thinking about somebody that's brand new coming on the team. How in the heck are they going to know what an earnest money deposit is, or like what a seller's pain points are, or what they're going to say, right? And so it's taken us about 4 or 5 years to get to this point where we have that stuff available. We're ready for blast off. We've really been focusing on lead generation like the last 4 or 5 years. We're definitely the best in the state, and I'd reckon we're one of the best in the country, especially at outbound, with what we do and the amount of time, energy, and focus we put into that. So before we get into all that, though, Tori, I want to hear a little bit more about your story. Tell me a little bit about yourself, like your background, how you even found Offer Now Idaho.
Yeah, so I've been in the real estate space since 2020. I started in January of 2020, and I learned all of the basics of real estate investing. And then 2 months later, we had to all work from home because of COVID. And I spent the next several months teaching myself everything else that I could about the company that I was working for at the time. And then the rest was kind of history. I built their operations department from the ground up. They started out really small and we scaled very rapidly. So I learned a lot of what to do, what not to do. And it was definitely an experience. As far as just coming to Offer Now Idaho, I was actually a referral success story. So I had a friend that was working for Offer Now Idaho, and he texted me and he's like, "Hey, I think these people might need you." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever. Like, they're fine.
Yeah.
I'm happy where I'm at. Like, don't tell me about this. I don't want to hear it lest I, get the proverbial wandering eyes and then I will want to know more." And he was like, "No, I mean it. I think you'd really be successful over here. You should really talk to them." And I was like, "Okay, fine. I'll talk to these guys. I'll see what's going on." And the rest is kind of history. I started on part-time, just helping with transactions on the side. And just the longer that I worked with you guys, the more I was like, wow, these people actually care about what they say and they do what they say they're going to do. And that's invaluable, especially in the real estate investment space, because there are some really, really sketchy characters in the real estate investment world.
Yeah, lots to unpack there. Okay, so before I get into the sketchy part, because I actually do want to ask you, why is that? But before we get there, before we get to the juicy stuff, referrals, right? Regardless of your industry, this is going to be not only the highest success rate for the company, but also the highest success rate for an employee, right? It's kind of like if your friend introduces you to your future wife. You can go cold turkey dating and going on dates and playing the numbers game, or you can have a warm introduction to somebody that might be more compatible with you. So I think in our mastermind, in our groups, 70% of our industry employees come from referrals. This is exactly why we have the $3,000 bonus, right? It is really hard to find top talent, and it's really hard to find, I guess, people that are ready in that life situation to make that jump and be open to something new. So I'm going to go one step back before you came to Offer Now Idaho and you joined that first startup. Like, how did you find that? Was it through somebody else? What prompted you to want to join something that probably had a lot of uncertainty at the time, but sounded exciting?
Yeah. And so to answer that question, I was actually kind of brought on by a family member. And
There you go.
yeah, he was like, hey, this is something that I feel like you have the brain for. And you're really good at math and you like contracts and weird stuff. And it would be something that you'd be successful in. And yeah, I mean, if you look at who you'd rather work with, would you rather work with somebody who you know the character of, or would you rather hedge your bets with a stranger?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, especially somebody that hates math, and I'm just kidding, that loves math. Guys, Tori is our operations manager. She is an absolute wizard when it comes to all things contracts, all things processes, logical brain, right? So making a logical decision, it doesn't surprise me at all that you got there. Okay. And then fast forward to Offer Now Idaho, like what was it about? You mentioned kind of perhaps one of our core values, which is integrity, that people do what they say they're going to do. It's a rare thing. How could you see that? Because when people are like exploring opportunities, or maybe they don't even know that they want to make a change, or somebody's listening to this and they're like, I'm pretty good with where I'm at now. How could I even know that there's something out there that might be better?
Yeah, and so I have a couple of things for that. So this might get a little long-winded.
Let's do it.
But
This is really
um,
important to deep dive, though. This is where the reality of like where a lot of people are at.
yeah, and so the first thing that really stuck out to me was we were sitting in a meeting and we had just locked up a contract, and not even an hour later, the seller was so excited. They'd called their realtor because they're like, we're selling our house, we're buying land, we're going to go move out to the country. This is going to be the best day ever. And then their realtor said, okay, yeah, so you're going to need 40% down on this land, and you're going to have to come with this much cash, and you're also going to have to pay me. And they were like, hold on, pump the brakes. We need money. We can't
Mm,
just sell our house and get financed, because when they'd purchased their house, they didn't have to come in with money. And so they just didn't understand that with a land financing, you have to have way more funds to close. It's just a lot more involved. And they were like, we're going to be homeless if we sell this house to you. And we're sitting in this meeting. And I mean, if it's a situation where the seller is just being difficult, I mean, we'll hold them to that.
yeah.
But it was really impactful because we were sitting there and we're going, hey, like they're going to be homeless. They're going to have no options. This is a horrible plan. We cannot, in good faith, do this and in good conscience, because it's just the wrong thing to do. And I sat back and I was like, wow, we just left money on the table on purpose because it was actually the right thing to do. And so that was the first thing that really stuck out to me. And it kind of got my gears going. And I'm like, okay, this is a good company. And then when it came time to discuss Bill's Wymer Coin.
Wait, what is a Wymer Coin? For
Okay,
those
so
so yeah, so guys, we have a employee discounted homebuyer program. So every X amount of revenue that a salesperson produces, they get to qualify to keep one of our properties at a discount to fair wholesale value. So that means they are getting a discount to an already discounted property, and they have their ability to buy properties, build wealth, accumulate rentals, right? Both creative finance deals at, Bills is at 1.3% interest, or regular deals, right? So what is a Wymer coin then?
so the Wymer Coin is the tangible-ish concept of being able to have something to cash in for one of those properties. And so if you've earned a Wymer Coin, that means you have one of those that you can, it's like a get out of jail free card, but it's a buy a house card.
Okay.
And so once you turn that in, you get your house. And
Who,
so
who came up with this Wymer coin name? That's not even a good name.
some weird guy named Ryan, I don't know.
I was like, you know what? With all the crypto stuff going on right now, I just thought it would be funny to name it that. And I couldn't think there was like Wymer Buck or like, I don't know.
Let's stick with Wymer
Listen,
Coin.
you're talking to an ex-engineer and somebody very logic and math driven. You're not going to have a ton of creativity here with that kind of stuff. So anyways, sorry, continue. A Wymer coin.
Yeah, so a Wymer Coin. And we're
Yes.
discussing, and I was present for the conversation, and it was a discussion around, okay, well, Bill has a Wymer Coin now, and he's going to have this opportunity. And what would make the most sense for Offer Now Idaho for Bill to take on? It was, okay, well, Bill has a dog, and so Bill's going to need something with a yard. He's pretty handy, so he can handle some fixing stuff, but we want him to be able to move in because he wants it to be a primary residence. And so we're running through this list of all of these things that would be beneficial to Bill. And there was not even one conversation about the profit margins for Offer Now Idaho. It was all about what would be best for Bill and what house he would be happiest with. And I was like, holy crap. Like they actually care about the people. They don't just say they care about them. They actually care about them. And that's really what sealed the deal for me. It was not, I mean, obviously a company has to make money, but there was no talk of the company's bottom line. It was all about what would be best for this person that we're going to be growing with.
Yeah, I love that, right? I mean, this is the whole reason that we started the company, was to be able to provide a financial freedom vehicle for others. Like, truthfully, like, that's why I started it. And I wanted others to be able to experience that like euphoric feeling, but it's actually real. It's like not a dream, it's a different path that people don't talk about, that people don't advertise. And that was like my biggest thing when I was in the corporate world as an engineer, as I was like, they don't really care about me. Like, they say that they do, but they only say that they do just to keep me around. They don't genuinely care. Like, they don't. And actions speak louder than words, right? And the amount of time, effort, and energy that it takes to find people that will genuinely buy into that is actually quite hard, because it's so uncommon that people have their guard up. And they're like, I think a lot of times when we're interviewing and talking to people, it's hard for people to actually be fully open to the idea of like, wow, there's something incredible out there. And you even mentioned this the other day, or in prior days, you didn't even know that there was something out there better for you, or that you were looking for, until boom, there it was.
Well, yeah, I mean, I had the best job that I thought I would ever have. I mean, I had a great salary, great benefits. I mean, my team, I got to hand pick and I built them from the ground up. I built my whole department, so I made all the decisions.
Yeah.
I had so much freedom, so much trust, and so much independence. And on top of that, I was able to live comfortably. And so I didn't think for a million years that there was something better. And so when I had that text, hey, this is a really great opportunity for you, I was like, yeah, right. You don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It turns out I didn't know what I was talking about. So, which is a great surprise. And it's been an amazing ride, but it's people don't know until they know.
Yeah. Let's talk about the shysters, because I think this is a good segue, right? Okay. Corporate America is one thing. You have these massive companies. Of course, it's going to be difficult to maintain some semblance of a real people first culture when you're dealing with thousands and thousands of people. I get it. Let's just keep it real. But when you're a small company, these things really matter and have an impact, because at a startup, you're going to be spending a majority of your time working. This is the reality of it. Like, startup culture, it's hard, it's grueling, but it's rewarding, because you're all working on a mission together and serving people and giving value to other people. What is it about maybe our space, our industry, that attracts the not so good players? Like these real estate gurus, these people that, in public, they're one thing, in private, they're another.
Yeah. And so it's hard to know why, but I think the biggest thing is real estate is something that's accessible to everyone.
Mm.
I mean, you can go get a first-time home buyer's loan for barely anything, and you could technically use that for a property. I mean, if the circumstances are right. And so it's something that is really accessible. It's widely accessible. And if you play your cards right, you can give the illusion of making a quick buck. And so that, I think, is where people come in and they say, oh, wow, like these people are doing these flips and they're traveling all over the place. They've got homes across the country and they just vacation and they stay wherever they want. And so then just this, I don't know the word for it.
Sexiness.
Yeah. I mean, it's a sexy lifestyle to just be able to go wherever you want and see all the sights and travel to a bunch of different countries and still be making money and not have to worry about where your next check's coming from. It's fake, but it's so easy because it is so accessible. You can look on Zillow and find 10 houses that you want. So it's just a really easy way to take people's money by telling them that they can do it too.
So what are some things you've seen? So I've seen, the watches, the cars. I even saw this thing on Instagram. There's like private jets that you can rent Like they're not in the air, they're just on the ground and like the doors are open and you can like film in there and do your
Are
content
you
in there
serious?
like you're on a private jet, right? This is the kind of shit that I'm like, it's so poisonous and toxic. I know we're joking about it, but both of us are parents, and it's a really terrifying thing thinking about raising children in this social media age, let alone like hiring employees into blending this right amount of like, let's get really excited about this $10 million company vision all the way down to, yeah, but it's going to be really freaking hard. And then like trying to find that right mix of reality and excitement. What are some things that you've seen on social media or that you've experienced at prior companies?
The biggest thing to me I always crack up about is the new watch. You touched on that a little.
Okay.
But the sparkly, fancy, diamond studded watches are the sign of real estate struggle.
You mean like this? You mean like this Series 2, 3 years old Apple Watch?
Yeah, your
Nice.
super fancy watch. But yeah, the fancy watches, the gold chains. My Instagram is full of travel photos, so I can't bash on those too much because I like to enjoy where I go.
Oh yeah.
But just the constant bragging about the jet setting and the I'm getting paid to be on this private jet and all of those.
Well, and the wholesaling checks. Can't forget
Yes.
those.
Oh my gosh,
The pictures with the
wholesaling
checks.
Yes.
Yeah. Here's the truth about the checks, guys. Some of them are legitimate wholesaling fees, which great. You made a wholesale. You got a check. Great. Good job. A lot of times, like if you're flipping a property, let's say you buy a property for 100 grand. Let's say you put 50,000 into that property. So you're all in at 150. Let's say then you sell it for, I don't know, 200. After realtor fees and commissions or whatever, you're probably making like 20 to 25 grand. But because you put in $50,000 worth of rehab, you only owe 100 when you sell it. So the title company is going to issue you a check for your profit plus all of your rehab funds. So then you can flash a $75,000 check and be like, I did a $75,000 deal. It's like, no, you didn't.
Yeah. How
Like,
much
why do
money
you
did
need
you
to-
pay?
Yes. But people do this all the time. This is one of the biggest, I think, the biggest things that I see, at least with fakers or people that are trying to be something that they're not. And it all comes from this place of insecurity, right? So one of the things we really pride ourselves about on our podcast and everything we do in our company is keeping it real. That's why it's called the Real Freedom Podcast. It's real estate. We keep it real, right? We talk about our biggest failure right away, which I'm going to get to yours. I don't want to sound too soapboxy, but this is like a real thing about you have to be careful about who you pay for coaching, who you pay for mentorship, and what kind of company you join, right? You don't want to make a mistake and be in a situation where you're like, oh crap, I should have listened to Ryan. I should have known the warning signs. If you have somebody that's posting a bunch of checks all over Instagram, it's a huge red flag. You don't need to flash a bunch of checks if you're actually making money. Like there's a reason why billionaires they wear like flip-flops and they don't care how they look because they're actually wealthy. It's not the flash. You don't need the flash. So, all right, I'll get off my rant there, but I'm really passionate about that because I hate that. Before we talk about the company mission and this $10 million target and how we got to it, what do you think has been your biggest failure to date?
Oh man, that's
Let me rephrase, your most beautiful failure.
my most beautiful failure. That's a really hard one. That's a really hard question.
Yep, I'm going to put you on the spot. Doesn't have to be work. It can be anything.
Yeah, and I think that I don't have anything that doesn't sound incredibly cheesy. So I'll just start with just what I have in my mind, and then I'll go from there. So I think my biggest failure is not giving myself the chance to fail, if that makes sense. So, I mean, coming even into this role, I've had a lot of really good opportunities to make some really big mistakes. Some of them as little as, hey, make sure you put a comma there. Some of them, I mean, big. Like I said the wrong LLC to a seller and she thought that I was a scammer. I mean, I've made some pretty big mistakes that required some damage control. But I think the biggest thing that I would consider a failure was just the last few months not having that confidence in my own abilities. I mean, I've been in this space for several years now, and I walked in going, I don't know what I'm doing. When that's a lie.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. I know how a contract works. I know how escrow works. I know how to explain it to a seller. But I was so afraid and so paralyzed in this fear of screwing something up that I didn't really give myself a fighting chance to be successful in the first several weeks. And then Corey's like, "Hey, like, you know what you're doing. I trust you." And it took a lot of nudging. And then he finally pushed me off the ledge, and everything's been fine.
Yeah.
Nothing's exploded yet.
Well, I think this is where management and leadership, I've had very few good managers and good leaders and a lot of toxic ones. And I can say the single greatest attribute to a good manager, good leader empowers their team to fail. Because guess what? You learn the most by failing. And as long as it's not a knockout blow, which very few are, it's almost, I can't even think of a scenario. Actually, I'm going to tell you a story here in a second, and I think you probably know where I'm going with that. But you have to empower your team to fail. When you do that, you create this culture of not only accountability, but like a willingness to push it and develop new skills, right? And not be afraid. All of us on our company right now, we're drivers, we're go-getters. We are our harshest critic. We don't need a manager to be like, hey, you didn't do that correctly and you suck. We don't have a culture of fear, right? We want to have a culture, and we have a culture of empowerment because we want to encourage people to fail because that's how they learn and grow the fastest. So the other reframe of the story that I'm going to tell is it's interesting to hear what you consider to be a failure, right? And okay, telling a seller the wrong LLC or something. You know what happened to one of our deals before we hired you, right?
I do, but I think that's definitely worth sharing.
Okay.
Because that would be another,
Okay.
I wouldn't consider it a failure, but it's a big oops.
Okay. So we had a transaction coordinator before you came on, and this is an absolutely epic failure of colossal proportions. Okay. So we had multiple contracts going, right? Multiple contracts on the board. Needed to have a price renegotiation with the seller. We got an inspection, or we went and saw it, and it was in way worse condition than they described. Happens all the time, right? Unfortunately, our transaction coordinator at the time sent out a price reduction addendum to the wrong property. Okay. It had the right address in there, but it had the wrong price. So our transaction coordinator had mixed up the prices and which properties they go to in their head. And so this price addendum was actually like an $80,000 price increase, and sent that to our seller. Keep in mind, we already had an end buyer lined up for this deal with like an $85,000 assignment fee. Okay. What happens when you send out a price correction, increasing your price $80,000? What happens to your $85,000 assignment fee?
That 85,000 turns into 5,000 real quick.
Yes. Yes. So because of one paperwork error, we lost $80,000. I don't think I've ever talked about that publicly. And I'm not going to lie, it hurt. It's an epic failure, right? There's a lot of businesses and companies that wouldn't be able to, like, that big of a swing, wouldn't be able to make it, or it would be a very difficult thing to have to endure and go through. But when that's the bar for like what we would consider to be a big failure, mixing up LLCs or whatever, okay, it's fine, right? But I really wanted to share that because you won't hear that kind of stuff on social media of like, oh, we lost an $80,000 deal because of a paperwork error.
Oops.
Like, are people going to share that on social media? No, they're ashamed of it. They think that it shows that they're not professional, and it looks poorly upon them. But guess what, guys? We got to keep it real, because there's a lot of good stuff that happens. There's some bad stuff that happens. It's okay. We're going to be fine. We're going to do plenty more deals that are $80,000 or higher. And I think, I'm not going to lie, it hurt in the moment, but that's the frame of reference of how we need to use failure, right? How we need to view failure.
I think that I have to challenge you on that just a little bit.
Do it.
And I'll tell you why.
Yes.
So I think that what we just talked about, I mean, $80,000 is nothing to sneeze at. Don't get me wrong. That's a very big oops. But I don't know necessarily that the mistake is a failure, but more the mindset that I was told happened following that failure. So from what I understand of the story, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the mistake happened, and then that person was approached, and you were met with not so much humble apologies.
Okay, yeah.
It's more excuses and a little bit of a lack of responsibility and
Okay.
accountability.
Great point. When something this bad happens in your business, this is also the sign of toxic leadership, is blaming and being a finger person and not a thumb person. When you have any kind of challenge, failure, whatever, something goes wrong in your organization, if you as a leader are pointing the finger at somebody else and saying, it's your fault, how could you do this? Oh my gosh, you have a broken culture. Run away, right? It takes a big leader, just like the quarterback of a team. When your team wins, you get all the credit. When your team loses, you take all the blame. You should. Not all of them do, but that this is the important thing, right? That employee was not fired because of missing an $80,000 or having an $80,000 mistake. They were not. Why? It's a process failure on our part that we didn't have a second pair of eyes on it. That's it. That simple step, a simple little checklist, a simple, let's slow down, and empowering somebody that probably had too much on their plate, right? Like, this is always the leadership's fault. It is. You have to look at this internally and be like, how did I set my team up to fail? That's the truth. So this particular person was actually not fired for that mistake. It's when we approached them and they said, oh, well, no, I didn't do that, or tried to like get super defensive about it instead of just owning it and taking accountability, that it was like, whoa. If we have an accountability problem, that could mean we don't learn from this mistake and we repeat it. That's the difference, right? Because everybody makes mistakes. It's, are you learning from your mistakes and are you becoming accountable?
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm kind of driving at is mistakes are not failures, but that lack of accountability is what would be the failure from my perspective on that.
Yeah.
And so I think that might be where, yeah, like it doesn't really bother me to make mistakes further than, hey, don't do that again. But the failure there would be like a failure to learn or just a failure to thrive, or in my case, failure to give myself a chance.
Yeah. But what does it say to the rest of your team when they know, because word gets out, right? You lose an $80,000 deal and you're the morning meeting the next day in front of the team and you just got to wear it. What kind of message does that send to the rest of your team? It sends that, like, guys, we're above, like, nobody's going to get singled out here. Nobody's going to be put in front of a firing squad. This is not a fear-induced culture. Sorry for the analogy. I had flashbacks to Taiwan when I was an engineer, because the Asian thing, they always had to have somebody, like, a mistake was made, somebody's head is on the chopping block. Like, that's honestly, it was literally a joke as an engineer, that I know we're getting off the side tangent, but it was literally a joke of like, who's going to be put in front of the firing squad. At Offer Now Idaho, we're looking to hire A players to run our organization and help us grow our business. Corey, why would somebody want to work with Offer Now Idaho?
Do you want to be challenged? Do you want to grow? Do you want to have people in your culture push you to be the best version of yourself? I do. And that's why I'm here. And in addition to that, do you want to have the chance at growing long-term generational wealth? That's all a possibility with a company that's small, cares about you, and wants you to be able to invest in real estate.
What's something that separates Offer Now Idaho from any other real estate company?
It's really rare to find a company that can help you get into a home. Sure, they might throw a few thousand into a 401k that you can access when you're 65. How many people are going to help you either provide a rental property or a shelter over your own head? Through our off-market home buying program, we assist our employees in buying properties once they've achieved certain levels within the company. And that's really unique to people because you get that asset. You get to do whatever you want with it. And you're buying an off-market discounted property to improve the quality of your life and your family's life.
Yeah, not only that, we offer benefits, and we have a very challenging and high growth energy startup feel to our work environment. So we are looking for people that want to make over 6 figures a year. Right now, we have a $3,000 referral program. If you know somebody that's looking for a new role, we will pay you $3,000 once that person is hired by us and they hit their 90-day mark. So if you know of anybody that's looking for a new job or looking to change their life, shoot me a DM at Real Ryan Wymer on Instagram.
Let's get it.
That's literally because you could get fired.
Yeah. I mean, it's a real concern.
Yeah. They're like, who's the name? Yeah, but I know the mistake, but I want a name. That's what they would say. They like have to put somebody's head on a spike It's ridiculous. It's horrible. It's not the culture that you want, but it happens. So I know it's hard. $80,000. I mean, gosh, guys, I don't want this to sound like it's simple, but it's hard to do. Trust me. As a business owner, as a leader, you're going to have a lot of days where you don't feel like doing it, or you don't feel like your best self. You don't have that high energy. You're not the motivator that day, but it's necessary. Like, you got to do it. You got to do it. Like, this is how you empower people, and this is how you empower your team, and that it's okay to fail. Because if your team is scared to fail, they're never going to develop the skills, and you're just going to be doing everything. That's the other side of this coin, right? Oh, I'm the control freak. I'm the micromanager. Well, if Ryan wants everything done a certain way, why does he need me? I'm just going to sit back and he'll just do everything. You're never working yourself like out of that seat as a business owner if you're the control freak and you don't empower people to fail.
Yeah, and just you have to let it happen. You have to let people mess up because that's how they learn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What is the biggest thing? I know you mentioned integrity, that we really care about people at Offer Now Idaho. What's something that, just because we're keeping it real, what's something that you were maybe surprised about, or that we're working on as a group to improve, that you were like, well, I thought this was like this, but we have some room to improve there?
Yeah, I think that, man, you are not pulling any punches with these questions.
You have to, it can't be sunshine and rainbows all the time,
and
right?
I think the biggest thing there is just that continued conversation of accountability, because we have some really awesome people on the team, and even really awesome people don't show up with their A game every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to sit in that sometimes. I mean, our last quarter sucked.
Yep.
We had an amazing Q2 and our Q3 was just horrible. I mean,
Yeah.
and we all had to sit in that.
Yeah.
And it's a fine balance, like you mentioned, just being the leader and not demotivating everybody completely. Like, you don't want to have the Monday morning beat down every single Monday, but still being able to say, hey, we can continue down this road, or we can see this as an opportunity to improve. And that's something that we're really working on. And I think that's something that we're getting really good at, but just maintaining that frame of like, yes, this really sucks, but also stay engaged for the second half of the conversation because there's good things coming.
Yeah. I think what we talked about yesterday, right, as a team is, yes, Q3 was really hard, but look historically how many contracts we've gotten in Q4 and Q1 over the years. December, January, February, and March are always our highest number of contracts by like double. Why is that? We talked about why that is, but for the listeners, for those people that are listening that maybe they're not interested in joining Offer Now Idaho, but maybe they're finding deals of their own, the winter months, like, this goes against everything that I've ever heard about seasonal housing and people wanting to move in the spring and summer.
Yeah, so the winter is the best time to get contracts, because if you think about it, you've got people listing in the spring and they're so excited, so excited. Their house is going to sell. They're going to move to the country with their chickens and their pigs and their whatever.
Yep.
And then days go by and now it's summer and their house is still sitting on the market. And they're like, oh, that's okay. The people are just getting out of school. Now they're going to be out of school. They're thinking about where they want to live next. They'll be moving into their new house over the summer. And then summer passes and it's fall. And they're like, oh, well, we still have a chance because school hasn't started yet. And then school starts. And they're sitting in this house and they're going, I really want to move. And I don't want to have to go to my Thanksgiving and see my Aunt Frida and tell her that I'm still living in that house with the wallpaper. And
those Thanksgiving, those awkward Thanksgiving conversations. Oh my gosh.
Well, yeah, because at Easter, you told everybody you were moving and you were buying this new house and you'd had it picked out and you had designed the fence that you were going to build for your dog, and you're still in that house. And you're going to have to tell your family in November that you're still in this house. Or worse, maybe you decided that the house is too much for you in April and you're trying to make this mortgage payment. And maybe somebody in your house is a seasonal laborer and you're not going to have a paycheck all fall or all winter. And you're going to have to ask your family for help over the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're going to have to choose between your mortgage and your kid's Christmas. What are you going to do? How are you going to pick?
Yeah, this is a very real thing, right? You have a combination of forced conversations and downtime, right? time off work. What are people doing around the holidays? If you're not traveling, or if you're traveling, you're going to see family, right? If you're not traveling, there's a lot of time sitting at home with you and your thoughts. It's dark earlier, it's colder, you're indoors. A lot more time to sit and think and have hard conversations with friends, family members, whatever, that might not be on the same page. So what you see in our space is a lot of people that have to sell do so in the winter. Nobody wants to move in the winter when it's cold and snowy and whatever, everything's a pain in the ass, but only people that have to sell do it in the winter. So I think you have this rare combination of like all the stars aligning, doubled down with the fact that it's an election year. How many sellers do we hear right now that are like, oh, I'm waiting until after the election, I don't know what's going to happen, as if, I'm not going to go on a side rant, but like the election, I have news for you. The election has absolutely nothing to do with housing whatsoever or interest rates whatsoever. It has no impact on you and your life decisions at all, truthfully.
Yeah, I mean, once the election happens and nothing has changed in any significant form or fashion, they're going to be like, crap, I still need to sell this house.
Yep. But people make decisions on emotion, not logic, right? So, okay. But that's the point. It's an election year. This year is going to be even more gangbusters, especially between Thanksgiving and New Year's Day. That is the time to get contracts. This year, I think it's going to be even more explosive because of all those factors.
Oh, yeah. Well, and we've got the right people in the seats right now, and we're only going to be growing more. And so that's going to help us get in front of people faster. And so that's going to make our year even more epic.
Yeah, 100%. Any other thoughts on like us going into winter in Q4? What are some cool things that are happening with the company where we're really like setting the foundation to go for it?
So we have really leaned into continued ed and just investing in our people. So we have a couple of different trainings that we're investing in right now. And so we're doing weekly trainings on top of our regular sales huddles and role plays and stuff like that. And just putting that time and effort into the people that we have and investing in them is showing a lot of benefit. We have somebody on the team, and the very first day that we did our new training, he reached out to me not even an hour afterwards, and he's like, I implemented stuff and I got an appointment like that, and it worked. It was like magic.
Who was this?
And this was Ryan.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And so it was a discussion on just like building rapport and not rushing through those seller conversations. And he was like, my conversation time with this seller was almost 25 minutes. And we set this appointment and I feel so good about it. And he was so excited. And so just investing in our people that we have right now. Plus, like I mentioned, just bringing on more people because we want the right people on the boat because the boat's leaving, whether people join or not.
Yeah.
We're going to do it. But if we have the right people, it'll be a lot easier and a lot smoother sailing.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's talk about this $10 million vision. From your point of view, how did that come about?
Yeah. So, I mean, we have this growth mindset just as a company culture.
Yep.
And we've been talking about growth. And I mean, you and Corey went on a fishing trip and all of a sudden we had big plans. It really is how that came about. But I mean, in all seriousness, we were talking about this direction, but it was kind of a pie in the sky moment where it's like, yeah, we're going somewhere. And you guys went to the Collective Genius stuff and came back and it's like, okay, we're going to get serious about this. We're going to figure out where we're going and when.
Yeah.
And so when we sat down and we looked at these numbers, and it started out being a $10 million company by 2028. And then in the middle of this conversation, you stopped yourself and you're like, no, we're going to do this in 2027. I feel like this is too easy. I mean, I have to laugh when we say it's too easy because nothing about it's going to be easy. It's going to be a lot of work, but it's the good kind of work where it's like, hey, we're going to work really, really, really hard and we're going to see direct success. It's measurable success, and it's so exciting to see.
Yeah. Well, in having you and having Corey very operationally minded, thankfully, I'm not boosting my own ego. I don't consider myself like a pie in the sky visionary. In fact, I forget there's a test that you can take online from, I believe it's either Traction or Rocket Fuel, and it tells you like what percentage you are integrator versus what percentage you are visionary. And I think I was like 60-40 or almost 50-50 because of the engineer background. I don't just like to talk about it. I actually like to complete the tasks and everything. Where I'm going with that is setting the vision and the number with the year is one thing, right? What that did though is it really forced me and it forced all of us to chunk that down into years and then to think like, okay, what are the numbers behind this? This vision is great. It's exciting, but like, what do we actually need to do? Oh, we need this many contracts. Oh, with this cancellation rate of appointments, this is how many appointments we need to set. Oh, with growing the team, this is how many A players and B players we would need on the team, and showing the power of A players and what they can do in our organization, where an A player is worth potentially 2 to 3 B players and a plethora of C players, right? They're that much more coveted and that much more, I guess, sacred, right? So it's chunking down the vision into bite-size scoops of what do we need to do? Oh, great. Okay, well, if we hire 2 A-player closers this year, does that get us to our 3.5 target revenue for next year? 3.5 million. Not all the way, but a majority of the way.
It'll really help.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's why we're spending a lot of your time is being spent on recruiting and getting in top talent. How many interviews have you conducted and how many resumes have you gone through?
So I actually looked because you had asked me and I wasn't prepared with an answer yesterday. And I am at almost 1,300 resumes reviewed. I have done 235 screening calls as of right now. And we have 4 people that we've brought from that have come through. Yeah, and we've got some really good candidates in the pipe right now. I mean, we've got some great interviews scheduled that I'm so excited about, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and you have to be very choosy, especially because we ask a lot of people. And I mean, you should always ask a lot of people if you're going to be very successful, because it takes a lot of work to be successful. But if you're asking people to invest that much time, then you owe it to your company and you owe it to them to spend a lot of time making sure you're not setting them up for failure.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, that's a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Why is this so hard to find good people?
I struggle with an answer to that because it's not even necessarily that I'm talking to a bunch of bad people. Like, these people don't suck.
Right.
They're just not exactly the avatar that we want for this role. And that's hard because it takes a very specific personality and it takes a very specific skill set. So you could have somebody that has an amazing resume, is great to talk to on the phone, and then they start going through our process and we see things in our process where we're like, hey, you're a great human.
Yep.
You're a great candidate. Most companies would be so lucky to have you, but you're going to fizzle out in 6 months and hate us.
Yeah.
Because you're just not going to be the right fit for what we're going to ask you to do.
So let's actually talk about some of those examples, because I think people that are listening to this, they're like, great, a $3,000 referral bonus. I know of some people. What are those things that, hey, you have all the requirements or whatever, but this just isn't exactly a fit, versus this is really like the avatar of somebody that we're looking for? Let's start with what we see as potential misfits.
Yeah. And so for which role?
Let's go sales. So both, yeah. Let me set the context. So we have both openings at inside sales and outside sales. Outside sales are our acquisition team. Those are the people actually going on appointments, meeting with sellers. They do set their own appointments as well and do lead follow-up. And then our inside sales team, they can be located here in Boise or virtually. They're primarily doing lead follow-up and setting appointments for our closers to go on in person.
Yeah. And so slightly different traits for either one.
Yep.
Our outside salespeople are going to be people that really thrive on those face-to-face human connections. They're going to be people that are a little bit more seasoned in closing and actual negotiation strategies. I mean, you have the basic overcoming objections skills and those kinds of things, but just people that are truly service-minded for people on top of that. And that's really hard because, I mean, everybody to some degree wants to help people. But I think about, I mean, I'm going to pick on Bill. Hopefully he listens to this, so I'm not talking behind his back. But I mean, you see Bill goes on these appointments, and by the time he's done, even if he doesn't have a signed contract, he knows everything that he can about this seller. He knows their personality type. He knows their dog's name. He knows what their ideal job would be. I mean, he knows everything and then some about these people. And not because those are on his questions list. He knows because he actually cares. And
Bingo. Yeah.
that's rare. That's that quality that we can't teach. I mean, I can teach you about a contract. I can teach you how to overcome an objection. I can't teach you how to care about these people and actually want to help them, even if it's not at a financial gain for yourself. And so that's the biggest thing that we need for those outside salespeople. And that's important for inside sales too. But for our inside salespeople, we need to make sure that they're okay with talking on the phone all day, really is a big thing. And realizing that the job can get monotonous and it's worth it, but it's a lot of grinding. You have to work really hard and you probably have to put in a lot of long hours in order to be successful.
Yeah. I think too, like delayed gratification. This is a really, really tough skill to learn. And I'm not totally convinced it can necessarily be learned. I think a lot of it has to do with your upbringing, right? The reality of sales and most type of sales with bigger deals and longer deal cycles or longer sales cycles, there's going to be longer ramp up periods, right? This isn't car sales where, hey, you make the sale, a week goes by, boom, it's on your next paycheck. Or even B2B sales where you're making the sale and then boom, it's on your next paycheck right away. It can be 30, 60, 90 days from the time we get a lead into our system and they are ready to meet with us, just ready to meet with us, not even to sign a contract. And then it can be 30, 60, 90 days from the time we either meet with them or get the contract signed for the contract to close and everybody to get paid. Now, on the plus side of that, the deal sizes are bigger, right? Because we're dealing with properties, median price point in Boise right now is like over $500,000. So, and our average deal size is right around 28, 29K so far this year. So there's positives and negatives to that. That's why we have, a combination of base and draw pay. You get a guaranteed paycheck every 2 weeks if you're a salesperson. This isn't commission only, right? You don't need to worry about eating or keeping the light bulbs on or whatever. Like that doesn't work. Ask me how I know. That doesn't work, right? This is what we have to do to get people into that. I'm going to front load all my work, especially the first 6 months are going to be really hard. You're going to be putting in all this work. You're going to be failing daily. You're going to have people hang up on you, not sign the contract. You're going to question yourself. You're going to have self-doubt. That's what growth feels like. That really is what growth feels like. And then after the 6-month period, you're going to start seeing the results. Right about around month 4 or 5, you're going to be like, man, I'm putting in all this work. I'm facing all this rejection and I don't have anything to show for it. That's tough. It's hard, right? I think we've done a really good job of explaining what those expectations are in the company because it's all delayed gratification. The funny thing is after month 6, when you start stacking contracts on top of each other, then it's like, wow, I got 5 contracts closing this month. Like if I didn't even get a contract this month, I would just have those 5 close, right? So it's a delayed thing and it works the other direction too. But this is the thing, right? Delayed gratification is how long can you endure short-term pain for long-term gain and big long-term gain. Our top sales rep this year is going to make just shy of 200K in Boise.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of money. Right?
Yeah, it's a huge amount of money for Boise. And that's a really good livable paycheck for really anywhere. The delayed gratification is so hard, especially in today's culture where everything is now.
Yep.
And I mean, you base your phone's value on how quickly it operates. You base your internet on speed. Everything is about just this fast pace. And so being able to just see the bigger picture and having that mindset of, okay, yep, I'm going to be stacking these no's. I'm going to be pushing through. This is going to be really, really hard for several months. And then I will reap the benefits, but it might take a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to look at myself in the mirror and really face these things that I need to work on.
Yeah.
And that's really, really tricky to find somebody who has those qualities.
Well, I'll say it starts with reframing what you consider a win. A lot of times we learn a lot more about ourselves from looking in the rear view than we do trying to look ahead. Of like, I'm not hitting, and this goes beyond our role. This is just a metaphor for life, right? I didn't do that thing that I wanted to do by this age or whatever self-induced time constraint that I put on it. And that causes frustration and anxiety for no reason. It's self-imposed, right? If we take the gap and the gain approach and we look in the rear view and we're like, where was I 6 months ago? Where was I 2 years ago? Where was I 5 years ago? Whoa, a little bit different. You can see progress in whatever you're doing. I don't care if you're training for a triathlon. I don't care if you're doing humanitarian stuff or volunteering, like whatever your why is. When you look back at your body of work, you can see that improvement. And so that is really how you need to be encouraging your team to just keep putting one foot in front of the other. It's going to feel a lot of times like one step back, 2 steps forward all the time.
And something that it always makes me smile just a little bit. Anytime we get a no and somebody's like frustrated about it or like, gosh, like we just worked so hard and then they told us no, we're like, no, like the no is exciting because you can then take that out of your mental space and you can move on because a no is still a win because then you have an answer. Not having an answer is where you have work to do.
Yeah. Let's actually talk about a big no that we got lately. So October 1st, we had a deal that was supposed to close at how much? I don't want to cause you any brain damage. How big was it?
That was a $55,000 assignment fee.
Okay. $55,000 assignment fee. Day of closing comes. Buyer's ready. What happens?
10 minutes before the seller's signing appointment, she calls and is just irate and screaming, saying that we did not explain the structure of the contract properly. She didn't understand. She's going to sue us. She doesn't want to move forward. Absolutely, like just an unreasonable level of upset. And we've uncovered quite a bit since then. And there were so many extenuating circumstances there. Stress makes people just do some wild things is really the thing. The people that need the most help are the ones that are beating the hell out of you.
Yeah.
But yeah, moral of that story, 10 minutes before her signing appointment, she said, I'm not signing, you can't make me, and essentially hung up on us.
Yeah. And so this is the important point here. This is somebody I had to meet with in person, I think 2 or 3 times. It was either 2 or 3 by multiple sales reps, actually.
Yeah.
So there was already, she's in foreclosure, there's a caretaker. It's a difficult situation, right? But if she doesn't do anything, then she's going to damage her credit. She's going to walk with nothing because she's going to lose it to the bank. In the days leading up to that, there were kind of these warning signs because we were trying to help her get her stuff moved out wherever, right? Offer to pay for movers and make it easy on them. And it just wasn't happening. So clearly, when she called that day, yes, it was a surprise. At the same time, it was like, okay, there's some emotional attachment to the stuff. There's some emotion. There's something going on with the property they haven't necessarily come to terms with. As a business, though, and as a salesperson who's like, oh my gosh, there's my commission check. I mean, we talked about that $80,000 failure at the beginning of this. Now we have a $55,000 challenge. Not a failure, a challenge. How you roll with these punches is everything, right? How you encourage your team and how you approach those things will dictate your team's buy-in, right? I've seen teams that are like, oh crap, they don't want to move forward. Like, let's just let them out of it. They don't push to discover like, what is the actual problem here? How can we do this together? Is it a matter of money? Is it a matter of helping us pay for movers for you? Is it a timing thing? A majority of the time, because you talk to sellers post-contract on a daily basis, it's usually just this general feeling of overwhelm.
Yeah.
Life is happening, right? Oh my gosh, closing day is here.
Yeah. I mean, we've had people that I have reached out to, an hour after they sign and they're like, I want to cancel.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, why? Help me understand what's going on. What changed because you were so excited about this? And then an hour later, and most of the time it feels really real. And they're like, whoa, like this is a huge life change that I'm about to undergo. And I didn't even remember to pack socks. Just like the silliest things that can really just tip those scales and cause overwhelm.
Yeah.
Like you hit one too many red lights and now you're going to be 5 minutes late. And then you're like, holy crap, I'm selling my house. I have to quit doing that. Because it's just one more thing. And just to touch on just like the team mindset, if you're like, oh my gosh, this $55,000 deal isn't closing, this is the end of the world. This is the worst day ever. Then your salesperson's going to be like, crap, like this is the end of the world. This is the worst day ever.
Yep.
I'm going to spend the next 3 hours moping. And those are 3 hours that we could have gotten 3 more contracts.
Yeah, more than
That's
3 hours, right? I mean, this
yeah.
is stuff when you're talking that big of a deal size, this is stuff that could affect you for days or weeks, or it could cause people to quit altogether.
Yeah. And how many appointments do we go on per week?
15 to 20 right now,
Yeah.
probably a little
And
bit more.
so
Yeah,
that's 20 opportunities for a contract that would be lost
100%.
if you don't have the right mindset. That's
Totally.
a lot of money.
Yeah. Now, here's what that abundance, growth, let's fight adversity together mindset gets you. We just got an email about an hour ago that they are going to finally be signing with for me to, oh, there is some wood for me to knock on. We don't know that that's actually going to happen. We fought, right? And this is so key. You got to control what you can control. And if you can't control it, you got to let it go. I'm not saying give up, but I'm saying you just have to focus on what can I control. I can't control that they didn't sign the contract, but I can find out what's going on and how we can get it closer to actually happening.
Well, yeah, we can't forcibly shove her in a car and take her to the notary, but we can get to the bottom of what the stress is. Like, oh, it feels really real that you're closing this chapter of your life and you're opening a new one. And that's really scary.
Yeah.
This is a huge deal for you. How can we support you and how can we be there for you while you navigate this? Because we're moving forward. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I love that we're talking about these like real hard things. I don't hear anybody else on any other podcast talk about the deals that they lose. I really don't. And I don't get it. I'm like, why don't people talk more about their failures? I learn so much more from people's failures than people's successes, truthfully. I do. So I'm glad that we can have these kind of transparent conversations and have that culture where there's no hiding, there's no secrets, there's no fear around what are people going to think? You know, what's Johnny going to do? Johnny's not on our team, but like, what is that person going to do?
Who's Johnny? Did you hire somebody without telling me?
No, I wouldn't do such a thing.